Classic Resto's Bike Edition is proudly brought to you by Fraser Motorcycles Sydney, Route 66 Tours, and Bigway Interiors. G'day, this is Fletch, the host of Classic Resto's Bike Edition. Finally, a TV show devoted to two wheels. So, if you're into bikes, throw your leg over, hang on tight and enjoy classic bikes.
G'day and welcome to Classic Resto's Bike Edition. Of course not possible without the support of my major sponsors. You can see these people at the top and the tail of every show. Now these sponsors stand for some pretty exciting prospects. To find out more about what they do, visit my website www.classicrestos.com.au. Okay, so here we are and you're probably thinking, Fletch, why a bike show? Well, Classic Resto's Cars Edition started out the same way. It's an opportunity for the restorer or the preserver to let everybody know about their classic machine. Plus, up until now, I feel a little sorry for the people with bikes because there's been no TV show to include them to let everyone know about the fantastic work that they've done. So sit back, buckle up. I hope you really enjoy this all-new first show of Classic Resto's Bike Edition. Here we go. The very first bike on Classic Resto's Bike Edition. Warren, welcome to the show, mate.
Hey, Fletch, how you going?
Good, mate, good. Thank you for bringing along a sensational 1979 Ducati 900 SS.
That's right, it's a 900 SS bevel. They're a bit of a favourite amongst the purists.
Tell us the story, Warren. Where did it all start with you? Tell us where the passion began.
Started with the coppers dragging me home and saying to my mother, does this belong to you? On trail bikes when I was a little boy, so it goes back quite a while.
Back in the days around Sydney where you had areas where you could go out in the bush?
Yeah, it was all right till the coppers started getting trail bikes and then they started to catch us too much.
Now tell us, mate, the Big Bad Duke. Have a go at it here in all its glory. Absolutely beautiful bike. How long have you had it? Tell us the story.
Okay, the story is, the bike is actually my wife's. I'm the caretaker. I ride it, I maintain it, I polish it, I clean it. We got it about 3 years ago. A bloke in Adelaide called Paul Edwards actually rebuilt it from scratch. It wasn't a basket case, but it did need full restoration. It's not concourse correct.
You're restoring a bike. You mentioned not concourse correct. What would be the couple of things that wouldn't be concourse?
Well, on this bike in particular, you got the bevel gazer, you got the wheels. It's got wire wheels that should have mag wheels on it. The fairing's not 100% correct. It's off an SSD Ducati, which is similar model, but it's the sports touring type model. But it's eye candy. You know, people love it because it's eye candy. It's just a very, very pretty bike.
Right, Warren, well, tell us about the engine, mate. Tell us about the cubes, how it performs.
Okay, it's a 900. It was 860cc. Performance about 75 horsepower. Massive amounts of torque, something like 70 or 80 pound of torque. Up a mountain road, it just excels. The little 750 was actually a better street bike, but this is just this excels on sort of the open road.
Mate, the Big L twin, V8s of the bikes, gobs of torque.
Yeah, that's why I went to twins after. I've had a lot of four-cylinder bikes, and I've gone to twins. I just fell in love with them as soon as I had one, and you know, I've got 6 of them now, and it's just a passion. It's become an obsession.
On that note, Warren, people watching, explain the difference between an L twin and a V twin.
Well, an L twin, I'll use the loser type scenario. An L twin's like that, the V twin's like that. You know, it's a different, similar configuration type engine. It's just the way it's positioned in the frame more than anything. Ducati, the front cylinder's lower, where the Harley's in a definite V twin, like a V8. You know, like you got the Valiant of V8. Similar thing with the Harley Davidson.
It's good to ask the basic questions. I mean, with Classic Restos, I mean, I had an email not long ago, and a guy asked me what is the difference between a 2-barrel and a 4-barrel carby. Now, that strikes me as someone that's at entry level, and these are the questions that have got to be answered. I mean, to the average person that are into their cars or their bikes, these questions, the answers are just instantaneous. But there would be people out there getting into this and thinking, well, okay, they're starting from scratch.
Yeah, well, I get a lot of phone calls. I'm the actual vice president of the Ducati Owners Club in New South Wales, and I get a lot of phone calls, people asking questions exactly like that. What's the difference between this and what's the difference between that? Is this viable? Is this not viable? It's a full-time job. I get a lot of phone calls, and I'm quite happy to do it. And anyone in the club tries to help anyone that wants to get into it at all. You know, like it's become an obsession with most of us.
Well, on this bike, it's absolutely glorious. I mean, they've got a fat look, the Dukes, don't they? I mean, it's got a nice line. One thing that always stood out with me with the Ducatis is their narrowness, like narrow across the top of the tank, narrow seat.
Yeah, well, this is quite a long bike. It's got a quite long wheelbase, very little turning circle. If you've never ridden one before, take it very carefully on the first few rides, but it is a very long bike and it excels on big open sweepers. But even in the tight stuff, it's actually quite a well handling bike. These sort of set the benchmark with handling, with a lot of the earlier bikes. And basically, I've never ridden a Ducati that hasn't handled.
Exciting too when you're doing a resto too. I mean, you do your research, you find out the colour codes, find out where the stickers go, all the tiny aesthetic things that really result at the end of the day into creating the masterpiece, which shows here today.
Well, this particular bike, there wasn't a great deal. He's built about 360, 380 bikes total. It's a factory black and gold bike, which is even rare. There's not a great deal of them in Australia. A lot of them are silver and blue. But paintwork, this is factory correct, but it's just a few little niggly things that don't make it concourse correct.
Okay, now five-speed gearbox, Warren. Just to let people know in terms of the acceleration and what it could do in each gear, run us through 1 to 5.
First gear you could probably run out to about 40 mile an hour. Take it through in third gear, you could probably run it up to 100, 110. Once you're in fifth, you probably top out at about 120, 130 mile an hour. Flat strap. They're not a hugely powerful bike. It's just the way they get there.
Mate, it's quick enough. If you come off it, it hurt.
Well, it definitely hurts. I've had the shoulder reconstruction to prove it hurts.
You got a HT Holden.
I've got a HT Holden Ute. Yeah.
Hang on, I've got to forget. Hang on, this is Classic Resto's Bike Edition. Better stay focused, Fletch.
Well, that's the trouble. Most people have bikes, have cars, and things like that. And once you got that sort of octane in your blood, it's sort of.
I've got to say this in this very first interview of Bikes Edition. By no means is Fletch professing to be the expert bike rider or even knowing a lot about bikes, but the network that I'm with Classic Restos, provides a great vehicle, and no one has done a TV show like this about guys and their bikes. And with over 155 odd episodes of Classic Restos now in place and travelling a lot of the world to bring back great stories, I could see an avenue for blokes like Warren to be on a show talking about his bike. So see how it goes from here.
Mate, you've opened a can of worms. How long is the length of string, you might say? You can take this a long, long way.
Now, mate, looking around the bike, I notice a really cool inspection window there, mate, in the bevel drive.
Yeah, the bevel gears. There's two types of Ducatis. There's a bevel drive and there's a belt drive. The early model had the bevel drive. You got a lot of purists that just love bevels. It's quite an efficient system. This particular bike, you can leave this bike for 12 months and not start it, and it won't have a problem. But with the belt drives, if you don't run them, the belt's going to memory, and it actually damages the belts after a period of time. See, so there's different characteristics to both types of bikes.
Thanks, Warren. Now stick around, because after the break, Warren's going to return and he's going to show us his outstanding 1988 851 kit version. Welcome back to Classic Resto's Bike Edition. Now, don't forget to find out more about the major sponsors, top and tail of every show. Visit classicrestos.com.au. Now, Warren, he's back again. Have a go at this 1988 851 kit version. This is a rare bike, Warren.
Yeah, it's an 851 Superbike kit version. It was basically built for the Superbike series in 1988. Ducati built 207 of them. They homologated them for that. And basically this is one of them. It's a factory race bike. It's very, very angry. It's very, very sweet. And it's very, very rare, especially in Australia.
Mate, got a comment on the tricolore colours representing the Italian flag?
Yep, that's basically, yeah, it's an Italian flag. They released 4 versions of tricolores. This is the second one. The first one was the 750 F1.
Mate, tell us, 120 horsepower from the factory. Tell us what that's like, thumping between your loins.
Well, it's a very sweet bike. It's It's got big cams. It's like having a XU1 running down Front Straight at Eastern Creek. It's very angry, and you can hear it. It's loud and it's obnoxious, but Christ, it's funny.
That's the thing with this old stuff. All the power is just, it's so raw, it's brutal, and you can really feel it. The late model stuff, more refined.
Oh, definitely more refined. The late model stuff's very, very raw too, but it's got much more refinement as far as fuel injection goes and things like that, braking. But in its time, this was the duck's guts.
We alluded to earlier with the 900 SS, gobloads of torque. I mean, we're looking at what, 220 kilos here of bike?
Yeah, 220 kilos. It still holds its own against some of the later model bikes.
Okay, you race this at Eastern Creek. Tell us, what's it like on the track?
Well, I don't actually race, I only do track days on it.
Just thought I'd try and pump you up a little bit there, mate.
Well, it's basically to keep the thing running. If you don't run them, it screws them up. If you don't run them, because especially this one being a belt drive, where the other one was a bevel drive, it's mechanically driven cams on the other one. These have got belt driven cams.
Classic Resto's Bikes Edition, being a 1988 bike, you might be thinking to yourselves, maybe that's not so old, but this show has got to start somewhere, and it's a classic bike like this that is truly worthy of the show. And to think that there are a limited number of these made, obviously you don't drive this on the street. I mean, that'd just be something that would just be out of the question, eh?
Well, this bike has actually complied for road use in Australia. It's one of about 14 in the world that was complied by a dealer for road use. It has got a few things they had to change on it to get it complied, like the speedo, there was a speedo and blinkers and all that sort of thing. But basically, this is the granddaddy to any other 4-valve Ducati in the world now. Like, you got your current 1198, you got your 916. This is the granddaddy of them all. Yeah, this bike was binned and restored back up to concourse condition. Yeah, it's still a concourse bike, but it needs to be ridden. So it gets ridden. It gets ridden at Eastern Creek these days. Simply, they keep it running. But yeah, it's a very rare motorcycle.
Okay, Warren, let's move on. Talk about myths and stories. Now, what can you tell us? Anything interesting about the bike along the way?
Well, for argument's sake, the seat, there's a round ring on the seat of this bike. It looks like someone stuck a hot coffee cup or a paint tin on it. It's actually not the case. It was a fault in the mould when they built the things. Only the first 200 bikes had them because it was
it's probably a mark where someone's shit themselves, from the acceleration.
Well, I could say that, but yeah, I had an email from a guy in the UK, and he said, someone's put a paint can in my seat. I said to him, send me a photo. So he sent me a photo of this ring in the seat. I said, mate, that's a factory fault. It was a fault in the mould when they had the seats manufactured in Italy, and only the first 200 bikes got it. I said, if that bike's got that seat, it's a genuine kit version. And even things like they got a little bit of plastic on the front headlight for endurance racing, race swing arm. They got full open reverse cone mufflers. It's loud as.
On that subject, tell us about the mufflers, Warren.
Well, they're reverse cone mufflers. They're not legal for road use. They actually got a stamp on them that says they're not legal for road use, the same as the rims. It's got magnesium alloy rims on it. They're very, very light, but they're very, very brittle. So you ride them on the road, you hit a pothole, you can destroy them. Very rare and hard to get. Even the fuel tank itself's hand-beaten aluminium. Some poor little Italian guys spent hours hand-beating it. It's a hand-beaten aluminium tank.
Mate, he would have been a proud Italian man, though.
Well, it's a 20-litre fuel tank, which is quite large for a bike of this type in the day. But yeah, it's a very rare bike. It's very sweet to ride.
In a couple of lines, mate, tell us what Ducati means to you. Possibly some advantages over other brands?
Not so much that. I haven't got an Italian bone in my body, but I had jet bikes for many, many years, and I jumped on a Ducati a few years ago. Just fell in love with the sound and the feel of the twin. Even the open clutch, most people either hate it or love it. Open clutch is noisy. It sounds like a printing machine going down the road sometimes, but when you're sitting in the set lights. But it's just, I don't know, once you get stung by it, it's like having a Ferrari or something like that. It's the premier Italian mark when it comes to motorcycles. Well,
I mean, the Jap stuff goes too, but I mean, these things, it's a different power, isn't it? I mean, they're doing half the RPM, so to speak.
Yeah, they're doing half the RPM. These develop a lot more torque. Most Jap bikes will out-accelerate this, but I mean, this is still a very, very sweet ride. Like I've had Japanese bikes, and I still love Japanese bikes. Love some of the earlier model Suzukis, the Widowmakers, things like that. and I've had a chance to buy one. But, you know, they don't come up very often. That's the problem. It's like these things, they don't come up very often.
One thing with Classic Resto's Bike Edition that I'm also very proud to be able to be in a position to do is to promote the clubs. Now, Warren, tell us more about your club.
Okay, I'm in the Ducati Owners Club in New South Wales. We've got a fairly large membership, 360 members. There's 4 Ducati Owners Clubs in New South Wales alone. There's probably 8 around the entire country. It's a great organisation to be in.
Okay, Warren, now plug the website, mate. We'll get it down there so people can go online and be part of these great clubs.
Okay, it's DOCNewSouthWales.org or just Google Ducati Owners Club in New South Wales and it will come up.
Cucciolo. Isn't that interesting? I believe that the Cucciolo is Italian for little pup. And the bike started out by mounting a small engine on a push bike, and that was the Cucciolo.
Yeah, it's 49cc engine, single-cylinder banger, on a little push bike frame, and that's how Ducati started, or basically started with the motorcycles, I should say.
Warren, you've been an absolute information source on the first episode, mate. I want to thank you so much for coming along and being a part of Classic Resto's Bikes Edition.
My pleasure, mate.
Now, stick around because after the break, we've got a very, very nice 1983 Harley-Davidson Disc Glide that's in original condition. Thanks, mate. There you go, mate. You've been waiting long. Welcome back. Third bike on Classic Resto's Bike Edition. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Good on you, Fletch. Glad to be here, mate.
Good on you, buddy. What's going on with this big bad Harley?
This one here, this belongs to Darren Rogers. He's our general retail manager for the group. He actually snipped it out from under me, the bugger, but it's a 1983 Chevrolet Disc Glide. FXDG it was. Rare as a proverbial rocking horse, mate. There's not a lot about. There was in Australia and New Zealand, not a hell of a lot, and I doubt there's very few left that aren't butchered.
Okay, explain the belt drive system.
Well, the belt drive on this particular bike's one of the first that come out with it. The Sturgis come out in 81 with a twin belt drive. Now, what do we mean by that is the final drive is belt to the rear wheel and your primary drive is belt. That's the case with this bike as well in 83. Harley didn't continue it on with the primary, but they did with the rear. All Harley since 1985 have been rear belt drive. So this one, though, is primary and secondary.
Okay, so back in the day, I guess, state of the art in terms of driving the bike would have been pretty smooth too, I would imagine.
Oh, the belt drive, mate. It's a smoother setup. It's cleaner, virtually maintenance-free these days.
Don't get your pants stuck in the chain.
Well, you'd like to think not, mate. Yeah, a few boys in the custom days like the open belt primary, and that wasn't real flash in the days of flares, but me and you are too young to remember that, mate, aren't we?
Okay, Greg, now look, Harley-Davidson, obviously synonymous with cruising. It's lifestyle. I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
It is, mate, it is. It's, I mean, Harley, you know, pretty much started the cruiser market. They were the first to come out with the so-called factory custom in 1971 with the Super Glide. Mate, I'm one-eyed and biased. I've been on them 30 years. I mean, this is very similar, this bike, to the first one I bought. And to me, mate, everything else has come after as a copy.
Mate, tell us, you know, some of the perception out there is, look, you know, the Harleys aren't synonymous with performance, but you can get them to go. And I mean, we're at Western Sydney International Dragway not long ago. Some of the boys were doing 10 seconds, 9 seconds down the 400. Well, I mean, that's no slouch of a bike.
No, mate, we can get them up and get them to get up and dance. There's no doubt about that. But
the Jappa boys say the Harleys don't go. What's going on there?
Oh, mate, they haven't been on it. I mean, they're a little bit jealous, I guess. The thing with Harley, you know, it's a V-twin engine. Now, you've been to Eastern Creek. You've seen them down the quarter mile. Fair enough, we've hotted them up a bit. They get up and dance. But the power in a Harley's usable power, mate. It's torque. It's low-end grunt. It's like a big old V8. And that is usable power. On the street, day-to-day riding, that's what you want in a bike, torque. Not top-end high horsepower performance. That's nothing. It's low-end grunt that you want, and Harley's got it by the bucket load.
As we said earlier with Warren, we're talking about the L-Twin in terms of the godloads of torque, doing half the RPM of the Jap bikes. It's a totally different power range. The way they put their power down to the pavement, totally different, just like the V8s.
That's exactly right, mate. I mean, it's you know, as I said, it's usable, proper power, and the motors never working. I mean, a Harley redlines at 5,500 RPM. You know, it's never working. A whole different ballgame. So it's like comparing, you know, a V-twin and an old V8. Your inline 4 Jap bikes and that type of thing, I guess, is more comparison to a Mitsubishi Evo or something like that. That's the sort of comparison which people tend to understand.
So Look, it gets back to personal choice. It depends what you like. I mean, Ducati, well known for its racing, Harley for its cruising, but I mean, have a go at the stance. I mean, you know, you've only got to sit on this big boy, and they have got a certain feel of their own, don't they?
Mate, there's nothing like them. The look and feel of a Harley Davidson, look, sound and feel of a Harley, and mate, they even make an ugly bloke like me look good, mate. A Harley Davidson, there's nothing like them. They started the cruiser market, they started the custom market. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Been going now for 108, soon to be 109 years. The reason I think Harleys have been around for as long as they have is they've stuck with what they know. Okay, now a lot of guys out there saying, well, Harley's still their agricultural, they're this, they're that. They're a V-twin pushrod engine, it's old technology. Well, it is. But we've been doing it a long time. They've got it right. They're doing it best. Back in the 70s and early 80s, Japanese brand bagged it as ancient technology. Now they're copying it. And Harleys aren't as technophobic as people think. I mean, you know, you do have fuel injection these days. Electronic ignition's been around since the late 70s, early 80s, but they've stuck with what they know. The 45-degree air-cooled pushrod engine. You've now got the 60-degree double overhead cam V-rod water-cooled engine. But that's Harley's success, sticking with what they know, what they do best, and making it better every year that they go on.
As we alluded to earlier, the Western Sydney International Dragway. Greg was there. Take a look at some of this footage and watch these big girls shoot down the 400 at some pretty good ETs.